It's midday right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to Lunchtime Politics, where we'll give you all access pass to the big happenings in politics and in the polity at midday. So let's get things started off with political happenings. It feels like we are already in sometime around 2026, almost 2027, given the development we're seeing across political parties, politicians, and the political class. So the first off on the program is member representing Abia North and South Federal Constituency in Abia State, Alex Ikweche, along with key stakeholders from that Old Bende region, comprising 9 local government areas, have now passed a vote of confidence on Governor Alex Oti, pledging support for his re-election in 2027. During a courtesy visit, the members and the stakeholders under the umbrella of the Old Bende Progressive Union praised the governor's administration for delivering on his promises through transformational projects such as the Abia Industrial Park, the Abia Seaport, and the Abia Stadium City, among others.
We have never had it this good. We've never enjoyed leadership and governance the way we are currently enjoying the administration of Dr. Alex Oti. This is a man that everybody from different political parties can attest has done absolutely well. Abia State has become a construction site. All the senatorial districts have different projects going on. I am a member of the All Progressive Grand Alliance. I'm a member of Abga. I'm not a member of Labour Party, but look at me telling you that the governor has done exceptionally well, and it has become necessary that we appreciate him and thank him, and come together as a people of Old Bende, comprising of 9 local governments, and put together a grand reception where we will tell him how happy and how pleased we are with his administration, and also to tell him that every Tom, Dick and Harry from the Old Bende extraction will support him with absolute indefatigability.
The Old Bende people, which is a bloc, a political bloc of different political party. This is brother and sister bloc. They have seen what the governor has done in area where they have the major business, which is here in Abia. All right, they said no, this man has done a lot, and then you can see schools, pensions are being paid, so they are very much happy. They want to show their gratitude to the governor.
So endorsement across political lines coming through just early in the day, and it's quite interesting. We're just here to bring you up to speed as they happen. Let's move away from politics to talk about what's playing out in the economy. And this time, the Dangote Petroleum Refinery and Petrochemicals has officially withdrawn its lawsuit against the Nigerian Downstream Midstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, known as the NNPCL, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, the NNPCL, and 5 other petroleum companies in the country. The case, which was filed at the Federal High Court, Abuja, was formally discontinued by the plaintiff's legal team. A notice of discontinuance filed before the court indicated that Dangote Refinery resolved to end proceedings against all 7 defendants, which included AYM Shafa Limited, AAA Rano, TT Time Petroleum Limited, 2015 Petroleum Limited, and Matrix Petroleum Services Limited. No official reason was provided in the notice for the decision for the discontinuance of the case. Details regarding the specific relief sought by Dangote Refinery, or whether an out-of-court settlement was reached, has actually remained undisclosed. Just as a background to that, he had filed a suit over the issues of importation of petroleum products and other things, having had our own, maybe you call it a backward integration, producing petroleum products in the country, plus other reasons as well. But perhaps conversation behind the scene has prevailed, and but we're not done with the issue of the petroleum sector, which is going to be the core conversation today, because it's a major driver of our earnings, foreign exchange earnings in the country, which we haven't been able to diversify. So let's also tell you that the Senate Committee on Public Accounts has given the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited 21 days to provide detailed explanation on financial discrepancies, in their view, totaling 210 trillion naira. Even as a group chief executive officer pleads for more time to respond adequately. Appearing before the committee in response to an earlier summons, Mr. Bayo Julari, who is the MD CEO of NNPCL, stated that he required more time to properly study and understand the issues flagged in the company's audited financial statements covering the period between 2017 to 2023. According to the chairman, the 210 trillion naira in question was extracted directly from NNPCL's audited financial statement, and the company is expected to provide concrete explanation for both its liabilities and its assets.
But what this committee said, unless proven otherwise, is that NNPC should and must account for 210 trillion. The liabilities, as shown in the literature of the financial statement, is 103 trillion. While the assets side, the receivables, is 107. We want the liabilities to be accounted for.
I've just been over 100 days in this job, and I can still say to you that there is so much that I'm still on my own doing to check the baseline of where things are across the company, and it's a Herculean task. Your commentary today also brings a clearer perspective to what I actually thought was the issue. I want to plead, Mr. Chairman, sir, to kindly give me some time to just dig into the perspective on the issue that you have raised. You were so kind. If you can give me 4 weeks, I think I will have done justice.
3 weeks will be the period within which he responds to us.
There are a few things to figure out in that conversation. I will help break it down to the best of what we can do here on the program. We're being joined in the program by our guest, who is the MD Today, Tomorrow Energy Limited, Francis Enakele. He joins us virtually from here in Lagos, Nigeria. Mr. Enakele, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin with what we just watched play out. I don't want to call it drama. This back and forth has been there. There were calls on the NNPCL CEO who is just he said, look, I'm barely 100 days in office. I'm still trying to get a hold of all the things I'm required to do. So if you give me more time. But to the crux of the issue, which has to do with what is seen to be a discrepancy. I think what I read from the chairman of the committee, he said they didn't use the word missing and otherwise. So in simple corporate accounting, in the statement of financial position, or what is popularly called as balance sheet, if you will, liabilities and assets, account receivables, account payables, what is your owed and what is being owed, those in the region of accrued expenses, they say it's about 103 trillion naira. And then in the account receivables, the 103, I think, has to do with JVs and the rest of them, the things that the NNPC has to pay out. And then the one the NNPC has to receive is about 107 trillion. So if you put that together, an aggregate of 210 trillion. Initially, what was out there in the media was it was missing. So it looks like that has been resolved now, that there's nothing missing. Perhaps it's now a question of explain both sides of the book to the satisfaction of people who are oversighting you. I want you to help us make sense of how to manage these kinds of information and what it is you think the lawmakers are really looking for.
Again, thank you for having me. A lot has been happening within the Nigeria oil and gas space for quite a long time. And now that there's been change in management, we know that time has to be given for the management to properly understand the information in the audited financials. Notwithstanding, they have inherited a lot of information that has been seen in the audited financial statements that have been provided. Now, what Nigerians basically need to do, or what the government or the management system need to do, is ensure transparency. Now, the audited financials or the financial information that has been made available to the public needs to properly communicate not only their goals, but also how they intend to achieve it, but also need to show some sort of accountability and transparency. And I believe that is what that's what we Nigerians are looking for: more accountability, more transparency, more information to show how the funds are being utilized, be it the source as well as the cash outflow. So So more transparency as well as more accountability is required at this point to ensure that proper governance is seen and utilized efficiently.
Do you think that, because I know that Melchior has been vilified and demonized in many aspects, but there's one thing he did right, in my view, is to the fact that whatever vagueness we were suspecting, at least we can capture some of those vagueness in an account, in a financial statement. It came from all the way from
Correct.
minus $800,000 billion naira to all the way to 3.3 before he left trillion naira, although some of those things may be paperwork because of the under recovery they talked about at the end of the day. So if we're talking about transparency, Ojulari has now come forward with something I think some of us admire, a dashboard of some sort of a monthly report of how you can overview what has played out under the management of the NNPCL. So what are the core areas that Nigerians still suspect, despite quote and unquote the openings of the books, that you think that will further engender confidence that has bedeviled the NNPC for a long time?
Thank you for that question. The current managing director has provided or has implemented the dashboard, like you mentioned. That is to show how the business is performing, present state, and maybe compare it with previous or historical data, which is very good for transparency based on oil production or how funds are being utilized based on either the joint venture arrangement or the PSC arrangement. All of that is all well and good. Notwithstanding, the information that is required should need to be broken down for different audiences to better understand. Now, we're speaking a lot of financials here. Most people don't understand the information that leads from closing to opening balance, from opening balance to closing, on how the historical, how the year works. The international, an idea needs to be taken, or information needs to be taken from how the IOCs have played or have arranged their financial books or have communicated their position over time in their audited financials, which is not really rocket science, because at the end of the day, every stakeholder wants to see is their return on investment. Are funds utilized properly? Yes, the dashboard there is quite all right. It shows, but now what is the benchmark we're going to be using in that dashboard? What are we aiming at? I know the federal government of Nigeria, in terms of the oil and gas sector, wants to hit about 2.1 barrels of oil, 1,000 million barrels of oil per day. Now, how are we going to achieve that? What steps are going to be taken to achieve that in terms of the production reserve? Are we going to be drilling more, or those informations need to be clearly communicated? And all of that information also needs to be in the financial statement, in the notes that clearly explains everything about the financial statement. So to answer the question, yes, they are doing a lot more, but Nigerians over time have grown weary and tired, and they want to see quick action. They want to see that, okay, things are being gotten right at this point. So yes, they are doing a lot at this point, but a lot more needs to be done to show Nigerians that, okay, this is where we're going to, this is how we're going to achieve it, and this is how we're going to be held accountable.
You play in the sector. There has been accusation, but I would like you to either confirm or tell us whether you know or not. I try to follow the space as much as possible. The reason is quite simple, and I do encourage every Nigerian to know exactly what goes on with the NNPCL, because as it stands now, our economy is diversified internally. So if you look at our GDP, you can see what agriculture, crop production, for instance, does, telco services, all of that carries about a huge percentage of our GDP. Oil, crude oil is about, if you annualize it in every year, it's about 5 to 6% because of no added value. So we export everything. So, but in terms of our earnings, FX earnings, we're still literally 70, 80% dependent on oil and gas, if you will. Oil especially, though we're a gas nation. So that's why it's important for us, and that's how we offset some of our obligations. So there has been this accusation that there is no proper hydrocarbon accounting framework. What that simply means in English, for the purpose of reference to everybody, is that we may not know exactly what comes from underwater up to the surface because of metering issues across oil wellheads and all of that. Is that true, or these are just sensational? What exactly do you know?
Okay, for oil and gas accounting, to a reasonable extent, yes, the federal government of Nigeria through the NNPC monitors the reserves, monitors the oil and gas output. However, does more need to be done to keep proper accounting on the hydrocarbons that come out from each of the fields? Yes. I know through the NUPLC, they publish reports on production per each of the oil and gas companies on each oil and gas asset. But it does the NNPC through the NUPLC actually monitor that information to ensure that the information provided at wellhead is the same information they have in their record? That is something that needs to be done, which automation would come into play. Now, you're talking about the oil that's at wellhead and oil that gets to the terminal. Lots of oil is lost through theft, through vandalism, and through insecurity within the wells. But over time, that has been improving. A recent note or comment by Tony Elumelu mentioned that based on what they've been getting previously, I think that he mentioned that they've been losing about, say, 97%, and now they're seeing 97% of their crude at the terminal. So things are improving over time. But to talk about oil and gas hydrocarbon accounting, more automation needs to be put in place, more monitoring needs to be put in place, either at the wellhead or at the terminals or in between which the midstream, to ensure that proper accounting of our oil and gas it's kept, and also to ensure that proper revenue is it's attained at the end. But moving away from the oil and gas, moving away from oil, you have the gas industry that is also growing so rapidly from utilization of the LNG. I know that there are lots of projects that are coming in place because, like you mentioned, Nigeria is predominantly a gas nation. However, investment needs to be channeled in that area to increase its utilization domestically and also in terms of our export, which will create more revenue for the country.
I'm going to come back to you. Maybe double down on that question and piggyback from there, segue into other questions as we begin to wind down towards the end of the program. But we'll go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you more detail. It's an important conversation. I know this is not politics and all of that, but we're talking about the economy, how our monies are generated and spent. And this is the NNPCL is at the center of all of this across all the players. So this is an important conversation that everybody should pay attention to, because wherever your money is, that's literally where your direction is going. So we'll be back after this break. Join us again. Welcome back. My guest is Francis Enakele. He's the MD Today, Tomorrow Energy Limited. He's been bringing his expertise to the conversation. We're talking about the oil and gas sector, which is a major part of our economy. Mr. Enakele, I did promise that I would double down a bit before I let you off the hook on this. So let me read a tweet by Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel, who watches that space a lot as an economist. He said, despite the 78,000 barrels given to external contractors to secure pipelines, the commandos still not account for barrels diverted from a deliberately wrongly calibrated LACT unit. What comes to surface daily net of condensate is higher than what is reported to the government as daily production. The reason I read this, it may sound a bit technical, but all of that grammar has to do with this accounting framework, partly that we talk about. If this is a major cash cow, do you think the government is addressing it with the urgency that is required? Don't you think we should declare a state of emergency as soon as possible beyond the EOs that was signed recently in terms of incentivization?
Okay, that tweet, just to give our viewers more clarity, the LACT unit that was mentioned is called the lease automatic custody transfer unit. It's basically a device put to measure oil that is pumped through a pipe and what you get at the end of the point. So monitoring of the LACT unit is in two stages. One by the pipeline injector that installs the LACT unit on that pipeline, as well as the government that also needs to monitor the information. Previously, the way things were done is information is generated and sent to the government, but verification needs to also be made by the government on the volume of crude that or gas that is pumped in through that pipeline. The reason I mentioned that is more or less if you pump in, say, 100,000 barrels of oil through this particular end and you're only getting 50 at one end, obviously you know something is wrong, right? Be it theft, the LACT unit also helps you measure the volume of water or any other thing that's been pumped into it as well. Now, the importance of automation, I want to use automation because we need to automate the system. We need to use technology rather than just bare man security that has been done before, whereby you have a large area, you have men combing the forest. Automation needs to be put in place, be it for the government that is connected directly to the LACT unit or sensors to the pipelines to ensure that there's proper accountability of the crude that flows through that pipeline. I know that for we as oil and gas players in this field, we are here to monetize the asset, but we're also here to create impact in terms of jobs and the rest. So as much as possible, proper accountability can be done through automation to ensure that what goes in is what comes out. Now, to go deeper into this, yes, we know this is a cash cow and we need to focus more. The federal government of Nigeria through the decade of gas has focused more of gas utilization. I want to say that more investment is needed in that sector, not because of just only the cash that comes in, but also for the impact in terms of power generation and the other aspects that are associated from the cooking gas and the rest. We need to invest more in that sector. And when we invest more in that sector, we would see that more inflow will come in. But so for that to happen, policies need to be implemented and necessary steps taken.
Fantastic, fantastic. So let's talk about something that has been of a big concern to every onlooker. We've struggled literally through these years. In fact, some of us argue to the effect that it is great for government to be ambitious, but being realistically ambitious is maybe a safe way or they'll call it a cautious optimism. So I'm saying here that the volatility of the oil and the crude oil price, we pegged our at $75 per barrel. We know how that has fared in the last few months. I know what that impacts to our national budget. We're appropriated to the tune of about maybe $18 billion. And then you talk about the ambitious 2 million barrels per day. I think we just barely did 1.5 million barrels less condensate. So if you annualize 2024, we're revolving around 1.2, 1.3. I gave all this background, which you're super familiar with, to the effect that what is really holding us back from ramping up production aggressively? Because when we do that, a lot of the shortfalls that necessitates securing credit facilities from whoever may be limited.
Okay, thank you for that. There are lots of factors that are affecting our ability to generate more crude. One of the factors is further investment that is required in the sector, aside from the operating environment. Most of the oil and gas fields over the years have not reserved funds for reinvesting in the business to scale production. And what they're doing right now is they're in the market seeking financing for reinvestment to unlock new fields to scale up production. So one area that is hindering that is, one major area is capital injection into the business. Over the years, we've seen that what has been a major trend is the climate change, which has impacted so many businesses, oil and gas businesses, from their ability to raise financing from the international market or even sometimes the local market, domestic market. That's why most of them have been innovative to now enter into the capital market to raise finance into the capital market to carry out programs and activities in alignment with their work programs. So one major hindrance is the ability to increase production is capital. Another is their operating environment. Most operating environments, from insecurity to other issues, are also impacting it. So it's not really only about the federal government, because these fields have been, and most of these fields have been allocated to other private players in conjunction with the federal government of Nigeria. Now, so many policies or so many concessions have been put in place, from the joint ventures to the PSC, to see how funds can be properly gotten. I know that recently talks have been ongoing about the IJV, right, which would more or less set up the JV as an incorporation that will go into the capital market to raise financing. This is basically due to the reducing ability for the federal government of Nigeria to fund joint venture arrangement, their own portion of cash calls of the joint venture arrangement, right? But notwithstanding, the federal government has taken its necessary steps, putting key policies, key reforms, I believe, in place to ensure that the oil and gas companies are incentivized to produce from the passage of the petroleum industrial bill to other policies that have been put in place to incentivize the incumbents or the players that are right now in the industry. Notwithstanding, one of the issues, still like I mentioned, is cash. How to attract that capital to fund production is a key issue.
I must thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think we should have more of this so that we can provide insights and clarity for the general public who may not be interested in being inundated with the nuances and the jargon of the sector, to break it down for them. And so we understand, because this is our money, this is our industry, this is our oil. We need to know how it works, and all of the issues. And we're hoping that the NNPCL, hopefully this year, under July, maybe next year, because I think the time has passed, let's have an IPO so that the governance structure can be further strengthened. Yes.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Mr. Francis Nakele, MD, Today, Tomorrow Energy Limited. Thank you, sir. And wish your company the best.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Ozongo. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.